Okay, Bobcat fans, it's time once again for another Coach's Corner. We got head coach Joe Samprone from the cross-country programs back with us. It's been a little while, Coach. Thanks for taking some time. Okay, so as we said, been a couple of weeks. Let's go back a little bit, take a look at that Arizona race. I know you headed out to Arizona State, took some smaller rosters out there. How did you think the teams ran?
Both teams ran very well. My memory serves me correctly over the past 2 weeks. The men finished third and the women finished second in the Arizona State race. And indeed, I think the men may have finished a little higher. If you recall, Daniel Horseman's chip wasn't red as he crossed the finish line, so he did not start in the results. And he ended up being our number one runner, and it was a shame because Daniel, I was standing at the finish line when he crossed. He crossed in 16:06 in a 5K, which was, I think he told me it was a PR by about a minute and a half. So it was a great race for Daniel. So everyone ran very well, the men's team and the women's team. Danny Destich, who had been on the women's team, who had been nursing a sore foot, it sort of got to her, and she had a lower finish than she would normally have. And as a result, we've got her, she's working with our training staff, and she's going to sit out for about a week or two, and we hope that she'll be able to come back and help us at conference if her foot cooperates.
Okay. All right, so some good finishes there. I know it was kind of an awkward race for the guys in that they were running a 5K, not a typical distance for you guys. How do you attack something like that?
The good news was we had 3 freshmen, and they just started running 8Ks this year, so they were accustomed to 5K distance. That's what they did through high school. And some of our more senior runners on the guys' side, they hadn't run a 5K in a while since high school, and they are all better runners now than they were in high school, so they all were hoping to set personal records because they knew their high school times, and they knew they could beat them, so they were excited about running a 5K. But 5Ks at the middle of the season is a good rest for the guys. It sort of gives them a little, they get to run in a race, but it's not quite as long. But a 5K is a sprint for our runners. I mean, that 8K, they really pace themselves a little bit more. In a 5K, they just run. And they're quite good at a 5K distance. They're really good runners at the 5K distance. So they all had a good time. They enjoyed it. And now we're starting to look into the future about 8Ks and then eventually at regionals 10K. So we're starting to build up to longer races. But the middle of the season comes, everyone had run 4 or 5 weeks in a row that went on that trip. So that was sort of a little rest for the guys. And that's why we took last week off. But I'm sure you're going to ask me about where we're going this week, and I'll tell you about last week too.
Okay. Well, a little bit more about the Arizona trip. I know that you, as a coach, like to take one large trip per, each year. It's a nice recruiting tool for you. I got to imagine to say if I'm going to be a Bobcat, I get a chance to see different parts of the country. I know you've been up to Vermont, New Hampshire, and then also out to Arizona a few times. So, what is the rationale behind a trip like that, and how did your freshmen react to, flying on a plane and then having to run?
It's always an interesting trip from a coaching standpoint. I like to use it as team building. When you get them away from campus in a group where the only people in the area they know are each other, then it really does a lot for team building. I have both men's and women's cross country, so I guess only tennis does the same thing where the men's and the women's team travel together. These kids are all friends. The guys and the women, they hang around together. They're friends at practice. They're friends at races. They're friends on campus. But sometimes, they don't all know each other very well because in the morning, to be honest, this morning we went out to run and it was so dark we had to wait about a half hour before we could. And you can't see who you're running with in the morning. So this was a way to get them away from campus for a couple of days, get them to get to know each other. It's a little later in the season that I'd like to do it. I really like to do this the first week or two when you bring in, especially when you come in with new freshmen. And we had 5 freshmen on the trip, 2 on the women's side, 3 on the guys' side. And it gets them to meet with the other people and, they hang around together. They're 24/7 basically. And they get to know each other. They also, when you get them away from campus, they relax a little bit more sometimes. They do a lot of homework. That's the surprising thing. They're always with their books doing homework. Coach wants to go. They want to study, so we let them study. But
well, your GPAs are some of the best in
the
athletic
GPAs,
department.
that's right. That's right.
Right there.
Well, I always tell them that when they first walk through the door as a freshman. We want to see you do well on the course, but we want to see you do well in your courses as well. Okay. So the grade point average is very important to us, always has been. And the kids have always performed well, so I've been very happy with that. But I like these trips. Like I say, it gets the kids away from here a little bit. It gets them to team build, and they're going to be together for the next 3 or 4 years. So that's the good part about it, that they make friends and they learn a little bit about each other. As a matter of fact, one of the things they learn, at these races, who do I go out with in the morning? When the race starts, do I go out with this person? I'm going to go out too fast. If I go out with this person, I'm going to go too slow. So they sort of start getting a feel about this time in the season, and I did see that at this race. I mean, some of the people who normally went out first said to the other kids, "Get in front of me. I'm going to go out behind you. I want to go out a little slower, so I'll have a little bit more at the end of the race." And those are the kinds of things they talk about and they work out when they're together for a while.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, looking forward, we've got the Young Harris Invitational this upcoming weekend, Saturday. I know that was a late addition to the schedule just a couple of weeks ago. Tell us a little bit about how and why that meet was added.
Well, it has a lot to do with what happened in Augusta last Saturday. We were originally scheduled to run in Augusta on the 9th. And the Augusta meet was going to be a 6K, 10K. 6K for the women, which is our regional distance for the women, and it's going to be our conference distance for the women this year. And 10K, which is our regional distance for the men. But the 10K being that close to our conference meet where the guys run 8K was probably stretching it a little bit. We really weren't ready to do a 10K. So originally on the schedule we had the women going to run the 6K. But the guys needed more work, and several of them said, what can we do that weekend? And there really wasn't much around. So that's when we dropped the Augusta, where only the women were going to go and do the 6K. And we added the Young Harris because there's an 8K for the guys to run. So we're going to head up to Young Harris tomorrow, spend the night, and then run Saturday morning. And it's going to be an 8K for the men and a 5K for the women. 2 years ago, our conference changed the rule. The women run 6K at conference, not 5. They run 5 all year and then go to 6. But it's not that difficult for the women to stretch that 5K into a 6 at conference. Usually at conference, the adrenaline's really flowing. When the gun goes off, they'll run until someone tells them to stop. So that 6K doesn't make much of a difference. So that's the thought behind it, that the men's team wanted a little bit more work. And also, we're trying different people. You may see some new names on the roster this weekend. We're mixing up who's going. Whenever we travel and there's distance travel and there's vans and there's hotel rooms and there's logistics, you can't just take the whole team. You can only count 5, so you usually take 6, 7, 8, something like that. And we've got about 12 or 13 on each team. So we're just mixing it up a little. There are going to be a couple of the folks that have been running well that want more work, a couple of the folks who came in that maybe weren't in perfect shape at the beginning of the season and now they're really working their way into shape. There were some people who came in that may have had a minor injury that prevented them from running at their full potential. So we're working those folks in because after this week we've got Augusta next week, and then we have 2 weeks till conference. So we're still trying to come up with our conference 7 for both men's and women's. And so we're just trying different names and trying to see, how things work out.
Do you have the roster set for this weekend?
I do have the roster set for this weekend, and if you're going to ask me, I'm going to have to think about it because I don't have it written down in front of me. But yes, we do. On the guys' side, I've got 4 men that are coming that did not go to the Arizona trip, and let's see, Colin Conroy, Rob Manning, Travis Knight, and Mike Hewitt. They're all juniors. So they're all coming back next year. And I think every name I mentioned, except maybe one, was a number 1 or a number 2 runner in the past year or two. So these are quality runners. But we just brought in some good freshmen this year, and everyone's been giving everyone a run for their money.
Right.
So
good pun there, by the way, with your team.
So we're trying to work. We're trying to find out. We still don't know. If someone said, who's your top 7, I could probably tell you the top 8 or 9. But I still couldn't tell you the order of finish as to who's number 1, number 2, number 3. Although Daniel Horseman has been having a tremendous season, finishing at the top of the list. On the women's side, Sarah Balco mentioned this morning, or she mentioned to me yesterday that her back was hurting her, and then this morning we decided she's not going to run this weekend. So she's dropped out of the race on Saturday, and Danny Desich, as I mentioned, is still injured. Carissa Ekstrom's going to run this weekend. Allison Loans, who's been running number 1 for us the past couple of weeks, is going to run. Andrea Burns is going to run. I don't remember how many that is. Let's see. Alex Taylor is going to run. Madeline McCain's going to run. Ashton Passion is going to run. So there's a couple in there that are new names. They're all quality runners, and we're very hopeful that we're going to put on a good show on Saturday. It's going to be a small race. It's only going to be 3 teams. Young Harris is hosting, and they've invited Berry College from Rome, Georgia, and don't know much about Young Harris, but I know Berry every year. We used to run up there quite frequently, and Paul Deaton, the coach up there, puts a good team together year after year. So we're expecting it to be some pretty severe competition. As a matter of fact, the coach from Young Harris told me that Berry's bringing about 20 men and 20 women. So even though there's only 3 teams, there's going to be a big crowd at the start line. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, and of course, Young Harris making that move from a junior college to a 4-year program, so it'll be interesting to see what they can bring to the table as well. Okay, we'll look for the results of that at gcbobcats.com. We'll bring you all the recap action there, and thanks again for your time, Coach. This has been a Bobcat Coach's Corner with Joe Samprone.